After another typical day of school, the institution was bathed in the gentle brightness of an approaching evening. I trudged in the direction of my final lesson, a history lecture given by a lecturer whose monotone voice had long since lost its appeal. On that particular day, my lack of interest in the class reached a height, and I made the decision to skip it in favor of finding solace from the uninteresting areas. My mind were completely preoccupied with the desire for a snatched minute of alone as I slyly made my way to a lavatory at the far end of the campus. I had no idea that my seemingly simple truancy would send me on a harrowing journey that would forever alter my life. The university's restroom was hidden away in a remote area, and neither students nor staff frequently used it. I thought that in this secret corner, my absence from class would go unnoticed. But what happened that day would horrifyingly demonstrate how mistaken I was. I huddled inside the furthest cubicle, putting my focus on a mind-numbing mobile game as my heart raced and anxiousness mounted. The abrupt blare of the university's intercom system broke the restroom's serene atmosphere. It was a lockdown alarm when a terrifying announcement resounded through the walls and shook me to my core. However, this was not a typical drill. I was aware of the emergency lockdown since the air was tense and threatening. The restroom was completely dark as I sat motionless in the poorly lighted stall while the building's lights flickered and died. An eerie calm that enveloped me like a menacing shroud took the place of the ventilation system's buzz. I started to feel concerned as I understood that a complete power outage during a lockdown was not typical. The faint screen of my phone lit up my shaky palms as I reached for it. I struggled to send a message to a buddy as my mind raced while I frantically searched for news of the developing crisis. I received a terrifying reaction. The fellow student who had a knife started the horror at the institution by banging on classroom doors and requesting access. I put my phone on standby as the seriousness of the situation overcame me, and I listened intently for any warning signals. The unsettling silence was unexpectedly broken by footsteps moving toward the bathroom. As the stranger entered the stall next to mine, fear seized me, and I questioned the stranger's presence while my voice quivered. He responded with doubt, stating that he was also trying to escape the nightmare that was developing. For Neon, we both remained hidden in our stalls, enveloped in a deafening quiet. The darkness that persisted beyond the bathroom door added to our collective terror. The silence was eventually broken by another announcement, telling all pupils to leave through the front doors, where the police were waiting. I stepped outdoors trembling, but to my surprise, the person of the adjacent stall made the decision to hang around and requested a little extension of time. Relief rushed over me as I moved toward the door, mixing with the lingering anxiety that had been holding me hostage. Outside, there was a noticeable police presence, and my worried call about the person using the restroom sounded the alarms. A broken glass, a disturbing reminder of the armed intruder's escape, was all that was left of the restroom when the police quickly searched it. The realization that the assailant had been hiding only a few feet away from me, hidden by the stall's walls, was terrible. My life took an unexpected turn after this tragic event. Overwhelming attention from my peers came in the days that followed as word of my naive proximity to danger spread across school. There was an enduring sense of vulnerability and terror as the armed invader remained at large. The recollection of that day acted as a sobering warning that danger may be far closer than we can ever think, permanently changing the way I perceive the world. I recently started my career as a university instructor, welcoming the difficulties and unknowns of this new phase. My journey took me to a public university in a nearby urban district, where I made my teaching debut in the cool September weather. The burden of responsibility fell squarely on my inexperienced shoulders, especially as I looked at my eager first-year class. I was standing in front of my classroom one day, going over a standard writing task with my aspiring students. The room was buzzing with youthful conversation and the aroma of aspiration. I had no idea that this day would plunge me into a terrifying nightmare. The university's public address system suddenly sprung into life, its speakers spewing a horrifying message that gave me the chills. Lockdown. Lockdown. Not a drill, this. This is not a drill, I say again. I groped for my phone, attempting to make sense of the situation as panic overcame me. I was never made aware of any lockdown exercises taking place at this time of year. I wondered if this was a rehearsal or something more sinister as anxiety tore at my insides. My heart was pounding as I followed protocol, turning down the lights and directing my kids to the corners of the room, out of the path of the windows and door. My meager experience provided little solace in this uncertain situation. Minutes seemed to drag on for an agonizingly long time, and furious banging could be heard echoing down the hallway. As the mayhem drew near, my heartbeat became louder and more rhythmic. As the unrelenting beating drew closer, I could see my classmates' eyes becoming red with fear. When one of my students could no longer keep their terror inside, they broke the silence. Fear permeated the dense atmosphere as a result of their shouts, which penetrated it. An uncomfortable silence descended as the frightening knocking from outside had stopped. A male voice broke through the silence and entered our fortress of fear. He said, "Hey guys, I think there's someone in here." And with each syllable, a new wave of fear swept through my body. My awareness that this was not a drill struck me like a freight train. As more footsteps approached our safe refuge, frenzied attempts to break down the door increased. My students clung to one another in that frantic situation, their eyes wide with fear. I lacked the training to lead us through such horrors, therefore I was unprepared for this terrifying ordeal. 2 thunderous gunshots rang out of nowhere, but they weren't fired by the intruders. As soon as they came, the cops started firing their rifles in an effort to defend us. The intruders ran away into the dim university hallways. Before we finally got the anxiously expected all-clear signal, it felt like an eon. Later it was discovered that the intruders were college students, their motivations unknown. When questioned, they remained evasive, providing hazy justifications and denied any malign intent. 2 years later, I'm still lecturing in the same classroom at the same university. However, the gunshot wounds from that terrible occurrence are still visible indentations in the university's walls, serving as a haunting reminder of the evil that can lurk even in the revered classrooms of higher learning. It happened during my undergraduate years, when life should have been joyful and carefree, on the night of my graduation. My friends and I excitedly anticipated the university tradition of throwing a sizable celebration on campus for the graduating class. Except for myself, who had been dealing with a persistent sickness that day, we were all ecstatic. I felt more and more ill as the festivities got underway. I made the decision to leave the busy atmosphere and large people and went to a quiet classroom in an effort to relax and recharge. In stark contrast to the boisterous party beyond its doors, the room was unnaturally quiet. I was trying to get comfortable when I heard louder footsteps coming from the classroom. I initially believed it to be a partygoer seeking solitude. However, when the footsteps abruptly came to a stop outside the door, a tense feeling swept over me. A towering, cloaked person entered as the door slowly creaked open. I panicked when I understood that this person was not present for the celebration. In addition to holding a bag, he also had something menacingly glowing in his other hand. He turned to face me and locked the door behind him as my heart raced. Only the stranger's icy, emotionless eyes were visible because his face was hidden by a mask. "You're coming with me," he said in a chillingly calm tone as he pointed the shining thing in my direction. I was terrified as I was trying to understand what was happening. The disguised invader was armed with a gun and wanted to remove me from the seeming security of the classroom. Just as he reached for my arm, a loud alarm sounded. The intruder froze as the emergency lockdown alarm for the university sounded. As he understood the warning's ramifications, panic swept over his mask. I was shaking in fear as he turned and silently left the room. I stayed concealed in the classroom as the minutes passed, my heart pounding. As frantic footsteps echoed down the hallway and distant shouts continued to be heard, the siren continued to scream. I finally heard the all-clear signal and came out, frightened but unharmed. Later, I discovered that reports of a suspicious person prompted the lockdown after the masked burglar was seen strolling about campus. I couldn't help but believe that I had narrowly avoided a terrible fate, despite the fact that the exact motives of that terrifying apparition remained a mystery. The graduation party had turned into a terrifying adventure that will always serve as a harsh reminder to me that danger may lurk in the most unlikely locations.